computer. So I am thrilled to welcome the lovely Anne McCluskey from our Devon group for our second session in today's SWIB online meeting. Anne, you have the bridge, as they would say if you're a Star Trek fan.
Thank you. I'll just share my screen now. Thank you, Jill. And okay, great to be here, ladies. And I'll just say a little bit about what I've done recently in setting up my new business, which is called Finding True North. I just need to change the slides a bit here. Hang on. Put it in a different order. That's it. So out of the ashes of COVID, I decided to set up Finding True North because there are a few things that were very clear to me. Finding True North is about finding direction. And there's a great quote that I often use is finding true north when the world's compass is broken. And my goodness, hasn't the world's compass been broken? So what I came to understand was that the future is unknown, the future is unclear, but actually it always has been. You know, there is no certainty about what's going to happen in the future. The other thing we've learned is that we have to expect the unexpected. If anyone had ever said to us 6 months ago, do you think the world could ever come to a standstill? You'd have thought they were crazy in asking that question, but that's exactly what happened. The other great news is that we have got through it. We have gone through what was unexpected, and I believe that change is continuous. There's always going to be change. So the more that we are able to get ourselves balanced in mind, body, and soul, we can deal with whatever shows up and not attaching and hooking in to all the external environment around us. Now, the other thing that's important to remind ourselves that we're designed to thrive. You know, our bodies, our minds are inbuilt to thrive and to have resilience that needs to be chopped up at times. And in the SWIB tribe, we are about thriving. We're about taking on challenges and overcoming them and actually keeping our vibration high. So this talk is about vibration, and it's something that's particularly a passion for me, because it's talking about something we can't see. And I love talking about things that we can't see. For a long time, I've straddled two paths, really. You call me an edge walker, that's the expression now. I've walked the edge between leading a very spiritual life and working in the corporate world for over 30 years. So the material world, the physical world, but I've also been very aligned with the unknown and the unseen in the spiritual world. So what we're going to be looking at today is vibration. It's about energy and how that can be boosted and how it can be dampened down in a number of ways. So I'm going to talk about the two worlds we live within. A little bit about our human body, because that's important to know how we're constructed, and look at what triggers us in a positive way, what triggers us in a less positive way, how we can keep our vibration topped up, which is so important now more than ever, not to get sucked into the negativity around what's going on around us and the well poisoners who are always coming up with ways to tell you why you can't do something. So how we keep it topped up, and a few things you can take away with you. So I think of the worlds we live in as a cosmic soup. It is two worlds. We have a lot of chaos going on around us, and within that chaos, we also carry our own baggage. We may have trauma from the past that's still with us. I'm talking about the sort of social media that's around us. There's a lot of interference. There's a lot of upheaval. There's a load of stuff around us that we can easily get caught up in the drama if we let ourselves. That's the chaos world. And then we have Nirvana, which is a very different world. And that's much more about a flow and life force, and actually what we can connect into and what we need to connect into if we're to keep sane and fit and healthy. So it's a world of contrast that we all live within. So this is really where We don't know where we're going. It's uncharted territory. There's a lot of fear in the environment, and my goodness, we've experienced that the past 6 months more than any other time in our lifetimes. There's lots of noise, there's lots of anxiety, there's lots of emotions floating around. And this is the buzz that's with us all the time. And it's easy to get drawn into that. So, you know, we have to picture ourselves, the elements, you know, the storms, all the natural disasters that go on are within our environment around us. So that's one way of looking at the world we live within. The other way is this nirvana. And it's usually found in nature, but there are other ways that we can connect into this. And this is like a gentle hum that goes on all the time. Think of it as the life force that's there for us to connect into, to remove ourselves when we need to from the world of chaos and the external noise and the interference. And this is about blue space and green space. And there's a feeling that connects with us because we have our own individual frequency. We have our own vibration. Our physical bodies work in the same way, but we have our own very special frequency that connects with the frequency of nature and other types of things that I'll come on to later. But blue-green space, there's been a lot of research done on that. And what they've shown is that blue coastal areas are the most health-giving in terms of our mental health and our physical health. And then green space in woods and forests. So we know intuitively that we feel better in nature, but there's actually the science to prove that now. So I think there's going to be more and more work done on blue-green space and also eco-coaching. I mean, I often walk in nature with clients and I'm coaching, but they're now calling it eco-coaching. So there's always a buzzword that comes up at some point. So I just want to say a bit about our bodies because I've always known that our bodies are pretty important. But actually, it's only when I got really ill at times that I realised how important our bodies are. And I think it's just interesting to understand how our bodies are made up. So we have molecules, atoms, light particles, sound and light within our bodies, and massively, we have 70% of water. That's what we're contained in our bodies. And actually, a baby has something like 90% of water. So that gives us a clue about how we resonate with a lot of things in nature where there's the water base. 70% of water is massive. Obviously housed in a physical frame, which is really important to look after as well as we can. And we also have this way of picking up with our senses, our 5 senses. So become aware of the unseen. We don't see it, obviously. We don't see energy or vibration, like we don't see electricity. Until we plug the socket in, we don't know what electricity is there. So it's unseen, but we really feel energy in different vibrations, in different situations. And of course, the cocktail of chemicals that we've all experienced more often than not. So in the world of chaos, you've got the stress hormones, if you like, the cortisol and adrenaline. It's like sitting in a vat of acid. If you can imagine that, when you've got these cocktails, chemicals coursing through your body, when you're in a sort of really anxious state, it really feels like you're being burnt. I know there are times when I've felt that I've been burning up, and it's because it's been a really stressful situation. In the Nirvana world, you have all the lovely happy hormones coursing through us. That's like sitting in a hot tub and really soaking that up. So the chemicals and hormones are very important makeup of our physical bodies and affect our vibration and our state of health. So important that we notice the triggers, and we ourselves can trigger a change in our vibration. You know, our thoughts, feelings and emotions are completely interlinked. So what we're thinking will then create a reaction, a feeling and an emotion. And that gives a clue to what's going on in our heads, because we often feel it in our bodies before we actually understand what's going on in our heads. And the important thing about emotions is that it's energy in motion. So if you think about when you're feeling a particular emotion, it's important to feel the emotion and maybe even honor it, but actually let it flow through. It's about movement. So it's also like water needs to change and flow. If water gets stuck, there's stagnant energy. If emotions get stuck in our body, it begins to create physical problems. So that's the important thing about emotions. And the other thing I would say about emotions is there is no shelf life to emotions. And I'll give you an example in a minute about that. You know, they can come up at any time, sometimes when you're least expecting it, because there's a trigger some way. So it's noticing what our triggers are. So we ourselves can change our vibration. We can raise it or we can dampen it, depending on what's going on in our heads and in the situations. Now, other people obviously affect our energy and our vibrations. And most of us have a real need to belong to a certain tribe or a group, because literally we're on the same wavelength. You know, it's energy wavelength. We just get each other. I say this about the SWIB tribe. We get each other, we have each other's backs, and we know we can be supercharged with energy when we spend time with them. And I just want to tell you about something that happened to me earlier this month, actually. I had a call to make, and it was quite early in the morning. And I also had another meeting to go to after this call. And many of you know that I work as a volunteer with a bereavement charity. So this call early in the morning was to talk to someone who'd been recently bereaved by suicide. Now, that's never an easy discussion to have, but unfortunately, it's happening more and more, particularly in the light of COVID. So obviously I had the discussion, but I was running a bit late, but it wasn't the sort of call where I could say, look, hang on, I've got to go somewhere else. So I was going to be a bit late for the next meeting, but I thought, actually, I can't end this call. So finally, I was able to end the call. And a lot of what this person was saying really resonated with me. Because my partner ended his life. And although it was a very long time ago, I was taken to that place. Because some of the things this client said was very similar to what I'd experienced. So my vibration became a little bit dampened and a bit low. And I thought, well, I don't know if I can go to this next meeting, because it's raised something in me that I thought had been dealt with a long time ago. So I'll make myself a cup of tea. So I did. But I did go to the meeting. When I first got to the meeting, I was probably a bit quieter than usual. I was in that sort of space where I didn't have a very high energy level. But literally within 60 seconds, I think, I began to really get involved and engaged in what was going on. And I put to one side the call I'd had earlier. And I'd almost forgotten about it within 2 minutes. I was at the SWIB tribe meeting in Exeter. And my energy level changed dramatically in going to that meeting. And I'm so glad I did. I'm grateful to Nicola and the others for having that space where I could really re-energize. So the great thing is, although emotions might come up from a long, long time ago, and it zaps our energy, it passes, and we can move quite quickly onto a different vibration with the right people. And I think that's really important, just an illustration of what can zap our energy and what can then boost it again. So that was really good. Trigger places we go to, we can either feel very drawn to some places or very repelled by them. And we notice it particularly if we're house hunting and going to look at houses. And I know myself a couple of times when I've been house hunting, I've gone to a house and known that it doesn't feel right. I don't feel resonating with it. But the houses I bought, I haven't even had to go inside. Just being outside of them, I got a really strong feeling of belonging. And actually, this was an environment I would like. So we're very intuitive in that respect. I think particularly women. You might go to a place of worship and feel very welcome. Others you don't. So there's all of this vibration, this unseen energy all over wherever we go. Sound is massively important. in affecting our vibration. They've done quite a lot of research on classical music and how that can really raise someone's vibration and create a calmness, whereas heavy metal, unfortunately, if you're any heavy metal fans here, that doesn't have the same effect. But sound is massively important. And the research they've also done in nature, it tells us that chirping of birds, birdsong, is really positive at de-stressing and improving mental health. Doesn't work the same with ravens and crows and the noise they make, but sound is really important. And interestingly, when someone is due to pass over, when they're close to death, the last sense they lose is their hearing. So that's why people are encouraged to continue to talk to their loved one, because that is the last sense that leaves the body. Sound is massively important to keep our vibration healthy. Colour I've mentioned, and Julie can say a lot more about colour than I can, but colour carries a frequency, colour carries an energy, and that's why we resonate with some colours more than others, and about the blue-green nature. So it's really interesting to just think about the different ways that our energy is raised and our vibrations raised, or when it's actually dampened down. Know your space invaders. And sometimes we are our own space invaders. I think during lockdown, because work and home boundaries become very blurred, physically there isn't the space that we usually enjoy, because you're in the same area. So physically having that space and creating that space is really important. But it's also about mentally having that space around yourself and not letting other people invade it, not being caught up in what's going on around you. So I think that's something I would say is particularly important, about knowing who invades your space and how you keep your boundaries. So safe boundaries, critically important. Having space is our birthright, and having an area that we can function effectively in and healthily in is absolutely crucial to being able to keep our energy topped up and to be able to achieve what we want to achieve. So I mean, I've had a lot of occasions where, particularly in a caring capacity or working with clients, where boundaries can become blurred at times. If I talk particularly about people who are bereaved, they often want me to befriend them because we develop a close working relationship, and that's the last thing that I can do, because I'm not there as their friend. I'm there to help them through death and come to terms with living in a different way. So boundaries, really important, and finding ways of creating those boundaries. Now, even if you can't do it physically, again, we can do it in our minds. You can create a boundary around you by visualizing, whether it's a bubble, a pyramid, whatever that you feel keeps you safe and protected. And people sense it. People sense that. We're very good at picking up on clues at times. So just summarizing, really, it's really important that we put ourselves first. It's not selfish, it's absolutely sensible, because particularly in with our responsibilities in life and the interaction we have with other people, whether we're caring for them, if we're coaches, whether we're leading in some way, like in the tribe, it's about really making sure that we're completely topped up and fully energized. Because unless we keep our vibration topped up, it's very easy to dip down, so it's almost like keeping it fully charged, because we all know people who are draining of energy, and they'll spend time with you, and I know for sure they spend time with you and they'll go away from you saying, oh, I feel so much better now, and I feel like I've got angel hair from a Christmas tree that I have to physically remove from my body. There are certain members of my family, even if I see their number coming up on the phone, I expect to have a really, heart-sink of a conversation. And I've been pleasantly surprised sometimes because they've been quite upbeat. So I have to challenge my own assumptions sometimes as well. But there are certainly people who will take energy where they can. And if you are in that environment. It's about making sure you don't sink into it all the time and get caught out. Talked about triggers and the importance of space and what invades your space. The other thing, I talk about resilience quite a bit, but the thing with resilience is it's about balancing activity and rest so that you can renew yourself, because you can't keep operating at a super turbocharged level without taking some time out and resting. So it's the balance there that's really important, and whatever it is you feel will give you that balance. Most people, it's in nature, but there are different ways that obviously you can get your balance, and just knowing what works for you. Soaking up the natural environment, it really makes a massive difference. There's so much evidence now, and the science behind it. I don't say I'm following the science, because I don't. I just take a bit of an interest on what's going on with the unseen, and the fact that scientists are beginning to recognize that just because something isn't seen doesn't mean it's not there. You know, it's so there, and we live it in that environment. So the other thing to finalize, I would say, we have one life, we have one body. We need to ensure that we prioritize them and live as long as we can, as healthily as we can, and keep up the vibe. Okay. That's it, folks.
And that was fabulous. Thank you so much. Lots of clapping going on in the screen. If you stop sharing, we can see if there's any questions. I am so with you on the drains and radiators. Some of you have read my book. I call them Dementors. If you're a Harry Potter fan, you know they suck the life out of you.
They certainly do, I tell you.
Yeah, absolutely. Right, so Anne, I'm so excited about your new journey. That was just brilliant. Thank you. Thank you. We love a positive vibe in the SWIB tribe. Ladies, does anybody have any comments or questions for Anne? Wave frantically so that I can see you. Larry, please unmute yourself and have a conversation.
And what prompted you to start your business to do this? Was it your bereavement? Was it your experience, or was it something that you've always been interested in?
It's something I've always been interested in, Larry, because I've always followed, so I've always straddled between a spiritual path and a material, physical path. But when I left corporate life, and I spent over 30 years in corporate life in human resources, I've always worked with people going through massive change, like restructures, mergers and acquisitions. So I was always interested in how people respond to change or don't respond to change. And I worked as a senior associate for a company called Corporate Soul Consulting for a couple of years. And that's taking spiritual practices into organizations. So that includes, you know, de-stress practices, starting with mindfulness, going all the way to full-blown meditation if people want that. And I think particularly over the past 6 months, it's become more and more apparent to me that people are very fragmented. They've lost who they are and their connection with themselves. And they're looking for a way forward to be able to cope within an ever-changing world. And rather than fearing the future, and I said this to Jill before, I like to replace fear with curiosity. And actually having an open mind, because imagine the worst can happen, the world comes to an end, well, the world comes to a standstill. We've been there, you know, so we can do it. So it's been a mix of a few things, but certainly dealing with death and dying and bereavement is massively important to me, because I believe that if you remove the fear of death, you can live a much fuller life. If people don't fear death, and that, you know, we're 100% guaranteed we're going to die. You can't do anything about it. But the more you can accept that rather than resist that, we can live fuller lives because we don't have the fear. So it's a number of things, Larry, that brought me to this. But I also feel that I've got a lot to share, and everything I share is based on my own experience in life and what I've overcome. And I'm just there to be of service, to support people who feel lost, connect with their power that may have been taken away or they've given away one way or the other. And there are lots of losses in life that we all experience. So bereavement's a big one, but, you know, loss of job, loss of health, loss of identity, particularly with people who are looking to retire or have retired. A few people I've been helping don't feel they have an identity. They don't have a job title. The kids have flown the nest. They're split up from their partners. So there's a number of losses we all experience, which is really about how we've lost our power one way or the other. So what my real mission is to make spirituality accessible for anyone, anytime, anywhere, to take the mystique away from spirituality. It's not religious, it's about finding a connection to life and who we are. And so I've talked to Beth a little bit about this, about running a program called Spiritual Health in the Material World, and actually helping people reconnect and get a balance without having to sit cross-legged on the floor and meditate for hours on end. It's very simple, just breathe, and very, very simple ways of connecting with things that trigger us in a positive way.
Does anybody else have any questions before I do our roundup? I'm very keen, despite the fact that these are amazing presentations and lovely conversations, that people can leave by 11 if they need to. But does anybody have any more questions for Anne? And there's some lovely comments as always in the chat. Thank you once again. I know we've spoken about your presentation, and it always finds resonance with people, whatever the subject, and that really was super. So thank you once again from all.
Pleasure.
Thank you very much indeed.